careful when making your way through this area. For this skeleton dragon, jump up and attack it with your flame. The next one, though, I suggest using your normal weapon with Sypha to hit the flames as they come at you, and then use your fire. Once you see it flash, duck back down to defeat the actual flames that are coming at your feet. This room is a huge pain. You're gonna have a hard time probably getting through this area, but thankfully we don't have Alucard with us because he can't even attack while on stairs. At least Sypha can use her stick while on the stairs. These night enemies return, throwing axes either straight at you or they'll duck and throw one. You'll know ahead of time which way they're going with it, and you actually can destroy it as soon as it comes out. So time it correctly so that they don't end up hitting you with those axes that come out. If you hit that top little block there, you see that you get a piece of meat to regain some of your health. In this room, you'll see that the ground actually starts moving upwards and you have to make your way slowly up. The real problem here is that you'll actually be able to see what platform you're going to next, but sometimes the enemies won't spawn until the screen moves one more time up. As you can see there, that knight didn't fall down until the screen had moved that last time. If you know where the monsters are gonna spawn, you can work your way quickly through there. However, if this is your first time, take your time while moving up. Don't quite move up to the last platform until you absolutely have to make sure that nothing's going to end up hitting you. We'll see another one of these areas later on in the game. Here's another one of those axe knights to take out. Use either your fire or getting close once again with the stick, and just avoid the axes if all possible. Here's the real pain level of this part. There's lots of the skull dragons on either side of the room. It's best try to just avoid them if possible, destroy the flames that are coming directly at you, and then very quickly move up the steps. Thankfully, you can't get knocked back if you're on a pair of stairs, but they will deal a decent amount of damage for you. Knowing exactly where you can stand on a piece of stairs without actually taking damage from either side is probably going to be your best bet for taking minimal or no damage while moving through that area. Next up is Frankenstein's monster. You actually have to wait till he walks a good amount on screen before you're actually able to do damage to him. Just hit him in the legs, avoid the blocks that he falls from the ceiling, as well as the one that he'll throw directly at you. This is probably another one of the game's easier enemies, and you'll see it again later on, and I'll fight it with Trevor that time. Speaking of Trevor, it's time to switch back to Trevor and Alucard as they make their way to the next level. I won't be showcasing Alucard's abilities right away because he's easily the worst of the three characters that you can get along with him. His best ability is his flight ability, which as long as you have hearts, you're able to stay in bat form and make your way through different platforms. But this area is not that useful to have it in, just watching out for the mummies at all costs. Alucard has the weakest attack, and throws out 3 of his attack every time he shoots it, but it takes 2 or more of one of the things hitting it in order to actually do any damage really to any enemy. Hitting an enemy with a single shot from his ability really won't do anything to it. While Alucard may be one of the most popular characters in the Castlevania franchise, in this game it's best really not to use them unless you're trying to turn into the bat form. The good thing though with Alucard is his ability will come in handy when we reach the final boss. Once again we have a split path, and I'll show you both paths, but first we're going to take the bottom staircase and go to this flooded ruin area. Ah yes, the fishmen that love to jump out of the water at random times and try to hit you. Thankfully, you can see their shadow in the water to know about when they're going to come up at you. They're only going to jump at you when they're about one space away from you in either direction, depending upon where they're coming from. Just take your time with them. Once again, if you're on a staircase, you won't take any damage from them, as I switched to Alucard just real quick in order to grab one of his power-ups. He has power-ups just like Trevor, but what it gives you is either his second blast or his third blast. Stand on this platform and take out the skeleton dragon out of the wall. Wait for him to open his mouth and then either duck or jump over his flame. If you're standing too near the staircase though, when you try to duck, you'll end up going back down the stairs. So usually it's best to try to jump over them if all possible, and if one's coming directly at you, you may want to jump down fast to the bottom platform and try to avoid it. So I'll switch to Alucard here, grab his third ability, but I'll actually move on just a little bit before I actually turn to the bat for the first time. You can quickly see that Alucard's weapon isn't necessarily the best, not only because of its spread shot, but it takes hitting a person with more than one of them at a time to do any real damage to it. When I make my way over here, I'm going to transform into the bat for the first time. This will allow me to easily bypass this dragon coming out of the wall and get to the door quickly. Once in the next room, I'm going to re-transform into the bat once I make it up the platform, grabbing a few extra hearts. You can see that there was a piece of meat in that one block, but as far as I can tell, it's almost impossible to actually grab that meat because it falls directly into the water. The bat really comes in handy here as I'm able to bypass both of the skeleton dragons and work my way up the staircase. Using the bat once again, take a quick shortcut, and now it's time for our boss coming up. This bone dragon is actually impossible to defeat as far as I know right here. You'll have to defeat him later on in the stage, but after he gets down to a certain amount of health is when he leaves. Every time you hit him with Trevor, you'll see that usually a piece of him will fall off. His directional pattern is pretty much random, and it's controlled actually by where you move or if you strike at him, so it's almost impossible to tell exactly where he's going to go to next. As you can see though, once his health reaches a certain point, he leaves the level and the place starts filling up with water. In the next area, you have blocks that will break and fall down, as well as water rising from the bottom. You may want to use Alucard if you have a lot of hearts in order to try to bypass a lot of this. But remember, when you're in bat form, you can still get hit by all enemies, and if you get hit, you'll turn back into Alucard's normal form. And if you get hit over a big open pit, you'll end up falling straight into that pit and losing a life. The good news is, this area, especially when using a bat form, only takes a few seconds to get through before we get to face that boss one more time, this time taking him out and completing the level. I'll be switching back to Trevor to take out the boss again. He's going to come out of this left wall here, but he can't hurt you until he reaches a certain distance outwards, so you can stand there to get ready to start attacking him. Thankfully though, he only has a few more hits usually left on him at this point, so it's not too bad to take out. The only problem is you want to make sure that you get there fast, because the level of the water, if it reaches too far up, you'll end up dying. Now it's time to switch back to Trevor and Sypha as they make their way towards the castle. The final levels of the game take place in Dracula's castle, and there's several different paths to actually get into the castle. The castle has like 5 levels total within it, and you actually can start off in the catacombs of the castle if you take a certain path. I'll be showing Sypha's way into the castle, and then switching back to Alucard to show both of his paths to get into the castle. In this area, we have moving water, which we see for the first time in this game. We also saw something similar to this in Belmont's Revenge on Game Boy. This also gives me the opportunity to use Sypha's ice magic in order to freeze the water that you can solidly walk on for a few seconds, as well as freeze any enemy in the air. The only bad thing about the freezing is if an enemy's frozen in air and you jump into them, you can still get hurt by them. So be very careful and don't accidentally freeze an enemy in your path that you can't reach, or you have to wait for them to thaw and then actually be able to attack them again. If you can reach them while they're frozen, of course, you can still break them, and it actually helps you defeat enemies in only 1 or 2 hits. As you can see, that axe enemy was destroyed in only 1 hit when I froze him. So it really helps cut down the amount of hits it takes to defeat certain enemies.